Yeah. Okay, let's do that again. Sorry. Hello, welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show. I'm your host, Willy Bragg. I am a few minutes late. It's my fault. I forgot to press the go live button here on StreamYards, and we were actually doing the show, and I feel silly, but it's my fault anyway. We got Jen Perelman back on our show the second time, and welcome back, Jen Perelman. She's running for the U.S. Congress in the 25th District of Florida against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Welcome back, and I'll let you have the mic.
Thank you, Willie, so much for having me back on. Hi, everyone. I am Jen, and like Willie said, I am challenging Debbie Wasserman Schultz down here in Florida's 25th. It is a Democratic primary, so I am running as a Democrat in a Democratic primary. We are a very blue district, and in such a way that is the only race that really matters. Whoever wins that primary, that's the person. So that's one of the reasons she's been there so long. She's been there for at least 20 years at least. And it's time for something new here. And we did pretty well in 20, getting nearly 30% of the vote. And we waited. We have spent the past few years building up the channel, our Generational Change podcast, and really working on name recognition and just really building community here locally, so that this time around I didn't run in 22. So this is the second time, and it's already been a whole different experience, both nationally and locally. Like the reception is totally different. We're not coming with no name recognition. Like it's a whole new animal now, you know?
Yeah, I know that since 2016, her reputation went downhill. And seems like, for what I've heard, your campaign has a window of opportunity to possibly defeat her in the primaries. It might be, I guess y'all might think it could be considered maybe a fairly long shot, but it's certainly achievable. Would I be correct to say that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would never do it if I didn't think it was possible. Again, like the fact that we got close to 30% and raised $400,000 in a pandemic. And let me say that for a grassroots campaign to lose 8 weeks of canvassing time that we couldn't be out canvassing was pretty massive. And so to be able to do as well as we did is very telling. Since then, our district has actually changed in our favor. And by our, I mean, working class, regular people. We lost a very wealthy, affluent Jewish part of our district, which was part of Dade County, which is actually where I'm from, is in that part of the district, ironically. But so now where I live now is in Broward. And so the district now is much more manageable for grassroots. The neighborhoods are much more canvassable than some of the big high rises that we lost all the big high rises and places that you can't canvass. So I think that it's just sort of a perfect storm right now of things that are coming to play, including what's going on in Gaza and my representative's take on that. So there's just a lot of things. I'm calling it a perfect storm. But yes, it is definitely it's very possible.
Well, that's a good thing, because when I think of everything that is wrong with the current Democratic Party, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is one of the first pictures that come on my mind right there. And I mean, from 2016 on to the present, she just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth of everything she stood for, being part of that Hillary Clinton wing of the Democratic Party, which she still so very well represents.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. Look, she is corporate. She is, it's not even, this isn't a secret. It's not a conspiracy. She takes money from everybody from Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, fossil fuel fracking. I mean, you name it. And she's very big into insider trading. And these are just facts. So, those alone to me are reason to want to unseat somebody. The idea that we can have a representative that is not, does not have to answer to special interests or corporate money, that's an offering. That's an offering. It's an opportunity. Because regardless of whether or not you agree with someone on all the issues, the idea to have somebody that can be talked to and reasoned with and is willing to discuss things because they don't have to, toe some corporate point or some talking point that they have to make, that's a value. And that's really what this is about. And regarding issues, I mean, the only things that she and I are the same on are women's right to choose, and that we're all in favor of LGBTQ justice, right? Like that's big. Those are the only two issues where she and I are the same.
Yeah, well, and on those issues, that's probably overall where there is a meaningful difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, or on the culture war issues of the Democratic Party. That's the one thing that remains better about the Democratic Party over the Republican Party. Otherwise, they're both horrible parties, and I consider both parties right-wing parties, where the Republicans actually flirting with fascism, and the Democratic Party being where the Ronald Reagan Republican Party was in 1985, with a very small left-wing social democratic faction that are just kind of malign and kind of in the corner.
Yeah, well, they're scared. They're scared. And, I was just talking about this today. I was on with Osiris in Middle MAGA, and just as the range of people that I talk to, like I can talk to anybody, that. But, we were just talking about this, and it's definitely, this is a problem. I mean, the Democrats cannot get out of their own way. They cannot get out of their own way. They have no strategy. They are not appealing to anybody. Both parties are completely corporate. It doesn't matter. Like, they use the LGBTQ issue, and whether you call that, rainbow washing or pink, whatever they're calling that, pink washing, whatever it is that. And then they use the women's right issue to fundraise. So those are the issues that they harp on. And yeah, they do matter. I'm not saying they don't matter. Those definitely matter. But the fact that she and I can both be in the same party and be so totally far apart, like where I consider myself to be academically would be an actual leftist, right? Not necessarily in a partisan manner, but just in a sort of, philosophical manner, right? But she's someone that is neo-lib bordering on neocon, and yet she's in the same party as I am. So it's really, it's obviously it's a big tent. It's a very big tent.
Both parties, in fairness, are kind of big tents, because when I say Republicans flirting with fascism, I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying all Republicans are fascists, because
right.
There's a difference between, let's say, Ron Paul and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I got issues with Ron Paul on economics, even on a few social issues. But Ron Paul is a whole different animal from, let's say, someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's basically Benito Mussolini in a female pantsuit. Whereas in the Democratic Party, there's a difference, between, I would say, at one time I would have said in the Senate, there was a difference between, I'm going to use somebody other than Bernie Sanders. I would have said John Fetterman and I'm going to use a corporate Democrat, the late Dianne Feinstein or someone like that. Right. But John Fetterman kind of became a disappointment recently.
Oh. Yeah,
So,
I said he's dead to me now. Like, it would be like, I would like
Same
rip
here.
the shirt in some sort of like expression of like, Jewish guilt, but it'd be like, he's dead to me now. But, I think that the common denominator, when you look at this, and yes, there's definitely this fascist element that's happening, but I would suggest that it's nonpartisan. And that fascist element is really the corporate takeover and when we're talking about corporate takeover, we're talking about like every aspect of our government, and our fourth estate essentially has been corrupted and taken over by corporations, which should be scary. And that is where you see sort of the shift from what would be, a democratic republic towards a much more fascist oligarchic situation. And, when people talk about, oh, Trump is the end of democracy, I'm like, the fact that we're having this discussion as to Biden and Trump, that we're already past the end of democracy. The fact that those are our choices, that's done. That ship sailed. So then the question becomes, how far are we going to let it go fascist? How far are we going to allow the corporations to take over for regular people? And there are certain Republicans, and we talk about it on our show all the time, like Thomas Massie, who is a completely non-corporate representative from Kentucky. He is conservative, does not meet with lobbyists, but represents his people. That's someone I can work with in this world. So for me, it comes down to like, and I say it all the time, I will support a non-corporate conservative before I will support a corporate liberal. Because when people are not bought and paid for and they're truly answering to their constituents, then we're coming, if we're coming at this as like an honest discussion, then we can come up with solutions for our people. It's when there's other interests involved that people aren't having honest discussions. They're just there because they're there. So then we're not going to come to any conclusions. So I think we just, I don't love, and again, I would say if we were looking at them on paper, yes, I am clearly closer to the Democratic Party than the Republican Party. But at this point, this is what's going on now is a uniparty of corporatism. And it's just, that's all I see.
Well, I do see that there is kind of a bipartisan path toward fascism in a way. A few months ago, I had Keaton Weiss from Due Dissidence on the show here, and he told me like, and it's true. I mean, we were talking about this whole Trump phenomena, and I want to make it clear. I find Trump to be a goofball. I find him silly. And sometimes I'm probably more dismissive of Trump than I need to be because he's such a silly goofball.
Buffoon.
I think he's stupid. A buffoon.
He's a buffoon.
Yes, perfect word. Whereas George W. Bush had, even though George W. Bush was kind of dumb and stupid, he was establishment enough that he had competent people around to push us on this road toward fascism, and we have been having our civil liberties encroached since the days of Bush and Cheney. Not that we were a civil liberties utopia prior to Bush, but since 9/11, it's been our free speech rights been encroached on, our right to privacy rights has been encroached on, and it's just little by little, they're getting very bold that they don't give a damn about freedom anymore, or liberty, or just a concept of living in a free society.
Yeah, no, they definitely don't. And what we have to be most careful about is how they use fear to basically bully people into submission to foregoing their liberty. Now, I am someone who actually read the Patriot Act because I am that dork. Back in, I don't know what year was that, 2002, 2003, whenever that came through.
2001.
Was it? Okay, I'm a little old. So when, and I remember thinking, okay, so we're basically giving up our 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights. And nobody seems to be saying anything. And none of these Congress people have even read this. So I saw the writing on the wall back then that this was where we were headed. And the interconnectedness of what's happening now with censorship, with the Patriot Act, with the cop cities, with this sort of authoritarian push that's basically coming down on all of our rights, because our right to protest, I don't think people understand how critical that is. That's one of our First Amendment rights, the right to assemble. It's a right to petition for grievances. It's sort of that same little package. But, this has been happening for a long time, and it is all part of the same sort of shutdown. When we look at, for example, one of my viral clips just got pulled off of TikTok today, just got taken down. And and I know why. Of course, I know why. It has to do with me talking about anti-Zionism and trying to, educate people. And the Israel lobby does not care for that. So, this type of censorship to me is the scariest threat that we're facing right now in terms of our freedoms. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll use fear mongering for people to, basically consent to giving up their freedoms, just like they did, after 9/11 with the Patriot Act, and people sort of rolled over because everybody was so scared of terrorists and so scared of Arabs and, Islamophobes. And they were, so we allowed that. And it's sort of the same thing that's happening now. People don't like stuff. They find certain things offensive. Jewish kids on campuses are saying that they don't feel safe when they actually mean they feel uncomfortable. And just too bad on that. Sit in your discomfort for a little while. It's good for you. So it's like we've gotten to this point where we care more about people's feelings. And in order to protect certain people's feelings, we're willing to shut down everyone else's rights.
Such as what's going on in Texas with Governor Abbott putting a special class on Jewish students, and I have to go make a little disclaimer. I don't want to make it like Jewish people. Well, I mean, you said it yourself. The Jewish people are not a victim; they're survivors.
They're survivors.
And here's the thing, but if you're going to have a special class of protection, you're going to have it for everybody or nobody, in the sense that, and he's not doing it because he loves Jewish people. He's doing it because he's a Christian Zionist, and they look at that, pardon the language, that goddamn piece of real estate in the Middle East that the evangelicals want. They just look at the people that are living there as custodians until the second coming, and then
right.
That's what it comes down to. And so I would tell people who are anti-imperialists, who may be mad at Jewish people for what they're doing in Gaza, which that's the government of Israel. That's not Jewish people.
No, it is not Jewish.
I always want to make that distinction there.
Yeah. Well, and just for people's information, there are more Christian Zionists in this country than there are Jews in the whole world. So I want people to understand that. So yes, it is definitely Zionism is the creation of a Jewish state, but the concept of it and the support of it and the money for it and all of the cheerleading for it is pretty, I would say, equal distributed amongst different people that are not Jewish as well. So,
And the saddest part is that even the good cop Zionism that used to exist, labor Zionism, is no longer a thing. It's dead. And so there's, for those that are hanging on to the concept of a two-state solution, I mean, I don't care if it comes in the form of a two-state solution, a one-state solution where everybody's living in peace. Just something's got to take place where peace is happening and nobody on either side is getting hurt anymore, and that's should be the goal. And
that should be the goal, but that is not the state of Israel's goal. The state of Israel has made it abundantly clear since its inception all the way until like this minute that there will never be a Palestinian state. So
even the government says they're opposed to a two-state solution.
Right.
Yeah.
So they are, this is what I say, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. They had their Jewish state. They had it. They had it in 48, but no, they had to go rogue in 67. They have to be in violation of every international law. They have to be committing a genocide. So inevitably they're going to end up losing it all.
Down the road, even Henry Kissinger, believe it or not, predicted that Israel will cease to exist in the near future.
Yeah. And we had a guest on our show who is Colonel Larry Wilkerson, who also is often like he's a foreign policy advisor. And he worked with he was deputy under Colin Powell, his deputy when Colin Powell was the chair of the Joint Chiefs. And He said it on our show that he does not see Israel making it another 20 years. So, the reality is you cannot have an ethno-state without an ethno-cleanse. The very concept of Zionism is white supremacy and colonialism. And to try to, walk that fine line and have your cake and eat it too, it's just not going to happen. So the only way this is getting resolved is for the world to come in and basically take over and say, this is no longer acceptable in the world, what you're doing. And apparently you are not capable of governing yourselves in a way that is in accordance with international human rights law. And so this is what we did. It's what we had to do with Germany, the end of the war. Some people just do not know how to play nice with others. And that's where this is. I am tired of people just discussing this and arguing about the use of the word genocide. Are you kidding me?
It is a genocide. It's not even anything to be debated anymore. I mean, yeah. And that's the thing right there. Was it close to 40,000 people have died. And I'm tired of being called. There's, people who knows me know that I am the furthest thing from a racist. I am the furthest thing from an anti-Semite. I'm not saying this is a virtue signal. This is who I'm telling you what I am and what I'm not. And I'm not a racist and I'm not an anti-Semite and all of that. And it just to go online to be called these things when I'm just like, well, Israel needs to stop doing what they're doing. And Benjamin Netanyahu is a dictator. He tried to get rid of the Supreme Court, the last safeguard toward anything that was reminiscent of anything that looked like a democracy. He tried to do that judicial overreach several months ago. And if he would have succeeded, God knows Gaza might be totally eradicated at this point.
Yeah. Well, that's where it's going. I said this from the beginning. I honestly, at this point, I do not see any way out of this less than 2 million dead people in the desert. Because at this point, what has been set in motion between disease, dehydration, famine, all of those things, there comes a point when it's irreversible. And as far as from what I'm seeing, we're past that point. So while obviously this all needs to stop because these are psychopaths that are on a mission of genocide and they need to be stopped at all costs, yes. But my concern is that the damage that has been set in motion is irreversible at this point. And that doesn't even take into consideration the psychological damage that's been inflicted on the people, both in Gaza and their families, all in the diaspora, that they will never be able to be there will never, until there's justice for that, there will be no peace. Mm-mm. And that's just the way it is. And, I know that there's people that believe that prior to October 7th, Israel was at peace and everybody was at peace. No, standing on someone's neck does not mean that they're being peaceful. Okay. That's not how this works. Real peace only exists with justice. What you had was suppression and quiet on your side of the fence. You had an illusion of peace. That's a privilege. And that's really all they ever had because, people don't see it, but oppression is violence. Even if it wasn't literal physical violence, but you were just keeping people in a cage, that's violent. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get tired of this question, but do you condemn Hamas? Well, my answer to that when they ask that question is, yes, I do condemn Hamas, but Hamas was a creation, or not necessarily a creation, but the Mossad went and funded Hamas or groomed Hamas to basically disrupt a more secular left PLO, which during the days of the Cold War orbited around the Soviets. And that was the objective, the divide and conquer strategy. And it's better to deal with a secular left-leaning force than fundamentalists. Let
me answer Miguel, because Miguel, no, I am not saying Zionism is irreversible. Zionism needs to be finished. What I'm saying is irreversible is the damage that has been done to the Palestinian population in Gaza that I think is irreversible, because even if you stop now, the disease, it's just so bad that I don't think that it can't be fixed at this point. But no, I'm not talking about Zionism. I'm talking about the damage to the people in Gaza.
Yeah.
I will not say that I condemn Hamas. I don't say that. I don't condemn them any more than I condemn, slave rebellions. I don't condemn them any more than the people that uprose at the Warsaw Ghetto. And while what they did are atrocities, I really feel very similar to Norman Finkelstein on this. Like, what they did was atrocious. But I think that we all have to remember that the level of violence in any society is determined by the oppressor, not the oppressed. And that, by the way, Israel does not have a right to self-defense against people that it keeps in a cage. So that is just not how international law works. So I love when people say, even our State Department spokespeople, Israel has the right to defend itself. Yes, if invaded by a sovereign nation, not when being rebelled against by people it keeps in a cage. That's actually, they literally do not have the right to self-defense on that. And no, I cannot condemn people who are born in a concentration camp for wanting to be free and doing it by any means necessary. Because if I were born in a concentration camp, I would most likely be setting some shit on fire. So yeah. I'm just saying, like, so when you want me to, and by the way, Hamas is not one little like group of fighters or militants. It's a big organization. It's an ideology, and most of it is not even armed. So, it's like you're wanting to condemn an entire political party when only one faction of it is even militant. So I just think nuance matters, context matters. And no, I don't condemn people that have somebody with a boot on their neck for flipping that person on their head.
Well, they certainly were less powerful than the IDF, to be sure. I mean, hand gliders it's not an air force. I mean,
Are you telling me you don't? And here's the other thing: there's not a chance in hell that Israel didn't know that was coming.
No, they knew it was coming. They knew it was coming.
And there is not a chance. And by the way, a significant amount of the damage done on the 7th to the people on the kibbutz, to their own people, was done by Israel. I would also think that it's very unusual for such a fabulous, intelligence operation that it took them 26 hours. Do people know how small Israel is? Like,
Egypt warned them. Egypt warned them that there was going to be an attack, and so in a sense, it was kind of their 9/11, but very similarly, and I'm not a 9/11 truther, but maybe I am an October 7th truther. Yeah. I do think they allowed it to happen.
They did it to their own people. You can look at what Max Blumenthal went through a ton of the pictures from on the ground footage, and just based on his knowledge of different weaponry, that who has what, you can see damage done by machinery and done by weaponry that Hamas just doesn't have. So it's just, it's common sense. And also Israel will kill their own hostages. We've seen them do it.
Well, also look at who died, who were the first victim. The first victims were people in a kibbutz. The people who live in a kibbutz are the least likely people to support Netanyahu. Yeah. And that's another thing to put into consideration. So Netanyahu found them expendable. And so he can say, "Oh, they killed one of my own, but hey, they would vote for me." So he was just like, he was his way of having his cake and eating it too.
That's why they don't care about their hostages. It's the same thing. I think you're right. And I actually know someone who had a family member that was one of the people that were taken. And I do know that she was a person that, and she was killed, but I know that she was someone that was there doing like service and stuff for Palestinians. Like, she was definitely not, like you said, not someone that would have been a Netanyahu supporter. This was someone that believed in Palestinian rights, that was there doing work in that regard. And so I think what you're saying makes sense.
Yeah. And I tell people, even when it comes to domestic politics in Israel, Meretz is the political party to follow, to support, because they're pro-Palestinian, they're pro-peace, they're anti-war, and they're everything that Netanyahu is not. So, and so I do think it's important that people who are critical of the country realize who Meretz is and wish them well electorally.
Yeah, for
Yes.
sure. Anything that's a step in the right direction is good. Like anything is better. What I think people should not get too caught up in is thinking that just getting rid of Netanyahu solves the problem.
You're
And
right.
just because Chuck Schumer made a nice little speech 6 months too late about Netanyahu and somehow you're going to throw him under the bus, like that'll just clean the whole thing for you. No, that's never going to happen. I give everybody about a 3-week grace period after October 7th to get their heads on right about this. And if you have not been on the right side of it in that time period, you're on the wrong side of history and you will have to forever live with that. It's just that, like, to me, it's been blatantly obvious for that
That's
long.
fair. That's fair. That's fair. So, anyway, now let's get back to 2016 because this is in a way 2016 is, even though I first heard of you in 2020, 2016 is sort of how I heard about you, and that was the Hillary Sanders contest with regard to your campaign in 2020. And didn't Bernie Sanders come down to Florida to campaign for you?
No, you're thinking of Tim Canova, who ran in 16 and 18. And Bernie didn't come down and like campaign, but he endorsed Tim in 16. And so he, and he did well. He also had $4 million in that race. Tim did against Debbie in that primary in 16. And then in 18, he ran as an independent in the general, which it's poor strategy. You can't win that way. And that was that. And then I ran in 20, but I met my business partner, Peter, and my co-host. We met on that campaign in 2016. So that was sort of when I started like getting really like acutely aware and strategizing about this district in particular.
Okay, yeah. For some reason, I thought that he endorsed your campaign. So.
No, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah,
wouldn't that be nice? No,
I didn't know he did endorse Tim Canova. I don't hear about him anymore. What happened with Tim Canova?
I honestly have no idea. The last I heard, he was like a MAGA person. I don't know. He went in a different direction. That's what I don't know. I just heard that, but I wouldn't swear by it.
Well, people do change, I guess. So,
yes.
Well, it happens.
I keep getting further to the left. At some point I'm going to fall off on that side. That's what I figure. I'll be somewhere, and I'll be on the bottom somewhere. I'll just like fall down.
A friend of mine online that I've known for years, unfortunately, shifted and not only became MAGA. Unfortunately, he became a Ron DeSantis supporter, but he's deflected back into supporting Trump in 2024. And he used to be knowledgeable, but he basically told me that I'm headed to a tanky direction. And I'm like, I'm the same person I always was. And it's sad because sometimes when people change their politics, it's like they change everything they've ever believed in. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, well, they have no ideology anymore. There is no ideology. They're on either side. It's just pure tribalism at this point. They stand for nothing. And that's what's so interesting about it. Like this whole red versus blue color war thing, when really both sides stand for nothing having to do with helping people. They just stand for their own insider trading. Like there's no difference. It's just crazy to me. But why do people get so rabid? And why does Trump have such a big base? Is because people are desperate right now. And when people are desperate, they'll seek profits, even false ones. That's just what happens. And people want to believe in something, and people love to have a bad guy. You have to have a villain. You have to have a good guy. Everything is black or white. They view things as a pie. If you get more, that means I get less. Like everything is a constant, and we're presented it in that way on purpose. So I just think it's just constant fighting. I feel like Democrats blame Republicans blame immigrants, everybody. And meanwhile, the only direction we should be punching is up. And that's what I find so frustrating.
Exactly. And a person that has changed their ideological colors 3 times in the last decade is Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, I
And
don't know what she is now.
I don't know what she is, because I remember when I first heard of her in 2012. She was basically somebody that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton was going to have as their successor. She was very unimpressive, uneventful. And then when she backed Bernie Sanders in 2016, and I consider her the Bernie era Tulsi Gabbard, even with her 2020 run, because I think that she was running to be Bernie's running mate. I've always thought that, and that's what I was initially wanting. I was wanting Bernie to be the presidential candidate. I wanted Tulsi to be either the running mate or have a spot in the administration, preferably Secretary of State or defense secretary or something dealing in foreign policy, because she was saying some very, very base good things.
Yeah.
And then after the 2020 election, she just started drifting more in right-wing territory, and people getting mad at me on the right is like, why are you all of a sudden just going around and criticizing Tulsi Gabbard? You used to like Tulsi Gabbard. I used to like her when she was Bernie Light, but now she's the Trumpian Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
Why would I like that?
Right. Well, it's interesting because, like you said, at some point you were thinking her as like the potential running mate for Bernie Sanders, and now she's like auditioning to be Trump's running mate. It's kind of a really interesting, it's what a difference 8 years makes, right?
Exactly.
Like that's so interesting. But then it makes me wonder, and this is something that I've learned just from being in this sort of like in this environment, this political environment, that maybe she just is vapid and just was going with whatever was the ability to get her where she wanted to go in the first place. I don't know, because unless I know somebody personally, I have to at least be open to the possibility that there was always sort of a grift. I don't know that people change that drastically in that amount of time. So that's where I start to question, like, it's one thing to get, maybe you're Republican and you move over, you're more libertarian now, or maybe you're, like, I definitely know shifts happen, but that's a little extreme.
Yeah, she's been so all over the place in the last decade. I mean, yeah, and to me, for the right wing to sit there and just eat it up. Oh, she's one of us now. Okay, she sold us on the left out. If Trump loses in 2024, where would her grift ends up next? So, I mean, if she, where would she go next?
A book, talk show, lobbying for whatever PAC that pays her. Look, it's a revolving door in that arena. It really is.
If I could have had any influence on her, I would have said, if you're going to grift, go into Chris Hedges territory, go into Abby Martin territory, go real left. Don't go in Trump territory. I think, as far as, I'm going to sound terrible saying this, if you want to be relevant and have profitability in your grift, you could have gone there and still done something positive, but no, she had to go into Trumpian territory. It just, I'm so disappointed with her.
Yeah, I find like we get a lot of disappointment, and the key thing is, people felt that with Alex, people felt that with the squad, people felt that with Bernie. Like, there's all these people that are just so like, disillusioned and just uninspired, and I totally relate and appreciate it. But we have to stop like putting our thoughts into one person or even several people. This isn't one of the, like, people really want heroes, and this is just not how that's not reality. That's not how this works. It's a mass mobilization effort, and there are certain people that might be able to come up with good suggestions on how to do that, but at the end of the day, it cannot be on any one or even several people. And we love to have heroes. We love idol worship. We like celebrity. We love that. We love the whole life. We put these people on pedestals when they're our employees, and our priorities are all out of whack. So
my problem was with Bernie, and this is, I'm not faulting Bernie for this. My problem with Bernie was that I projected so much into Bernie because my socialism comes from the tradition of Eugene Victor Debs, Norman Thomas, the old Socialist Party of America, as far as American socialism is concerned. And globally, my socialism comes from the old Labour Party in the UK, the Social Democrats in Sweden, the French Socialist Party, where they really made a transformative difference in societies and created good societies with the medical care and the powerful labor unions and pensions and the welfare state, a mixed economy and all of that. And that's kind of where basically my politics more or less is. And I sort of projected all of that in Bernie Sanders. So I saw Bernie Sanders as a one man's voice for social democracy in America. I was like, he's that one man voice that's actually in the chambers of power in DC. And that was the problem. I was like, what we need is more Bernies, but what we ultimately need. And I don't mean Keir Starmer's Labor Party. I mean, we need some kind of a Labor Party the way it was 50 and 70 years ago. Harold Wilson, Clement Attlee, something kind of along those lines. Something even further left than that. But that's what I would argue for here in this country. But that's a dream of mine, and I can dream, I guess.
No, I share your dream, Willie. And let me tell you, like, one of the key things on the platform, I hate saying platform, like my opinions on issues, is I'm really promoting the idea of the 21st century economic bill of rights. And I, like, when I joined the Democratic Party, and again, I thought of it today, it was 1989. It's a very long time ago. But, in my mind, my family were Democrats. They were working people. My family, I was the first person in my family to go to college. So, like, I come from just working people, and they were all Democrats. That was how I affiliated with that. So obviously we're not that anymore. And my goal is to get back that, and it needs to be a Labor Party. And right now, that's the only way we can really work within this. And so that's, like, ultimately that's the goal. And I do love the idea of a 21st century economic bill of rights. I'm a proponent of federal job guarantee. And I just, power concedes nothing, people. Why do we dream small? Like, I think we need to be pushing for what we want. And, no, you don't get everything right away. That's not how it works. But we need to be talking about these things to ever even consider getting them.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I feel like within the two-party system, and I'm very critical of the two-party system, but if I had to hold one state in high esteem for the Democratic Party, that would be the Democratic Farmer Labor Party of Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely wonderful things. You could almost say that they're doing things to Minnesota what a new Democratic Party government would be doing to a province in Canada, NDP government. And
why? Minnesota, those are Wellstone Democrats.
Yeah, and they did it with a one-seat majority. They did it, and they leveraged their, and so this is, I don't know where you stand on the issue of forced to vote, but I've been a very strong proponent of forced to vote. I have seen it so many times where forced votes have been used by people that we ideologically disagree with, and I still don't understand why people say it was the right thing for the squad not to use forced to vote against Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, no, I think I supported forced to vote all along. Like, I never had a problem with that. I think you need to employ all strategies. It's by any means necessary. You throw all the shit you have against the wall. And the idea that anybody in any position of power doesn't use their power as leverage makes no sense to me whatsoever in any circumstance. So, and I would also suggest, and something I am really pushing, is this idea that we need to combine all of these groups. And by groups, I mean, imagine if the labor movement, the environmental movement, the anti-war movement, the fight Stop Cop City movement, like all of these groups showed up for each other's actions. That's how we get a general strike. Because at the end of the day, we're all fighting the same oppressor. This is what people have to understand. Now, I get certain issues are more important to certain people because they are. I get that. But at the end of the day, we're all fighting the same oppressor. So it's this idea of creating the network so that at some point in my lifetime, we could see a general strike. We could see a situation where we've built up community networks so that we have support systems and safety nets in place for people to be able to not work and be able to strike. The only way we can build up these networks is to combine the movements. And that is very difficult to do because people are very stuck on their issues and their egos, and it's extremely frustrating. But that's the only way we're ever going to really get anywhere. That's just, that's what I'm trying to like facilitate in my life, that concept.
Yeah, we need a yellow vest movement in this country. I mean,
Yes.
And and when I look at France, I look at that as a model right there. I mean, they, pardon my language, they don't take any shit.
Here, hold on, look.
Oh my. Oh, you are awesome. we think alike.
Yes. Oh yeah, this is a gift. This was a gift from oh my God, Cantor was his. Is it Eric Cantor? I think his name. Friend of Steve Grumbine's. As you can see, I've got my Real Progressives logo on it. My Medicare for All Now. But yeah, I am ready for the yellow vests.
Yeah, I have argued for a yellow vest movement for I guess close to a decade when it started to take place in France, and just like we need that, and the way that they were striking last year was about a year ago when the Macron government unfortunately raised the retirement age from 62 to 64. Unfortunately, he succeeded in that, but I mean the French people went out in the streets and they're like they went out there and they made the government feel uncomfortable
because they have that social safety net where they can strike. We
Americans just roll over and play dead. I mean, my previous job my previous job was a union job. I was a 20-year member of the United Food Commercial Workers, and I hated contract time when they negotiated a new contract because I knew, oh my God, they're going to just take some more away from us, and they weren't going to go on strike. And I kept on hearing, oh my God, we're going to go on strike. I'm like, no, all of y'all from North Carolina, so am I. Y'all are not going to go on strike because y'all don't have it within y'all to do it. And I knew that they wouldn't do it, so they accepted whatever the company, what crumbs the company threw at them. So, I was grateful that it was a union job, and to not have a union job, to go from union to non-union is, even when it was a weak union, is as different as night and day.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the reality that people need to understand is even if you or your family or your people are not specifically in a union, the existence of unions raises up all labor. And that is a really important thing. And I emphasize that people in all areas should need to show up for labor, even if you're not in a sector or in an arena where you have a union option. Because that's just the only way this is going to work is if all the movements show up for each other. That's just the way it's got to be. And how long it takes us to get it together to do that. It's like a race to the clock to see what happens. Well, I mean, Florida will be underwater, but the rest of you might have a chance.
The thing about it is, I remember a decade ago, more than a decade ago, when Obama was running, they were talking about the Employee Free Choice Act, the card check. And they were campaigning hard on that. And I was very encouraged to hear them talk about that, because even though it didn't get rid of right to work, it would have undermined right to work, which is, I could accept undermining right to work, even if we weren't able to get rid of right to work. But as soon as
you're accepting crumbs, why are you accepting crumbs? We need the PRO Act passed. We need end right to work.
Well, I agree with you there, but I'm just saying that it would have made it easier for unions to organize. It would have actually increased the size of unions the way that the law was, that legislation would have been structured. And so unions would have obviously started growing under the Employee Free Choice Act. And so as soon as he got sworn in, he no longer talked about it, and nobody in Congress were really advocating for it
No.
anymore.
No.
And that was very frustrating. Is my point.
Yeah. Well, that's how it always is. You offer us crumbs and then we don't even get that. I mean, Biden couldn't even get a $15 minimum wage passed because the parliamentarian said so.
No public
These are
option.
not serious people. You know what I mean? These are not serious people. They're not honest actors. These are not people that are actually trying to do things to help people. So it isn't that they can't do it. They don't want to do it. And that's what is a key thing for people to understand. They don't want to do that because that would make it more expensive for their rich oligarchic friends to exploit their workers. See, that would be the problem. They don't want that. And that's really what it is. So, just people need to be aware.
Yeah, and what drives me crazy is I'm a socialist, and it makes me mad when the right wing calls people who are basically 1985 Ronald Reagan Republicans who are registered Democrats socialists. I'm like, it drives me nuts.
I know. I always hear people on the right saying that the Democratic Party is full of like leftist socialists. And I'm looking at people like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. I'm like, I don't know who you are talking about. Like, it's so delusional how far the Overton window has moved to the right that people actually think that somehow Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden are leftists, let alone socialists. Like, how absurd.
Well, I think that the only person today that they kind of stopped calling socialists were the Clintons. They used to say that Clintons were socialists through the 1990s. I think that by the time Bernie Sanders came along, they were like, well, maybe Bill and Hillary Clinton are not socialists after all.
GOP are still I'm telling you, there are people like, if you were to sit and watch Fox News, which I don't recommend anybody do that, and you do that, you honestly believe that the Democratic Party has been hijacked by crazy leftists. And it's so ridiculous to me.
I've heard it all. Listen, I've listened to talk radio. I'm in the car a lot. So over the years, I have listened to enough of their talking points to know exactly what they say. And everything is so predictable. And the media is so right wing. There's no liberal media. There's no progressive media. You have centrists called CNN and the mainstream news network, and then you have the right wing media like Fox News and all of that, and talk radio. They're just off their kilter. They're just Looney Tunes. I mean, they're so Looney Tunes that the late Rush Limbaugh is basically equivalent to the Young Turks compared to the rest of the right-wing media. I'm not even a fan of the Young Turks, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. That's how.
No, I'm a fan of the actual Turks. I've actually met a whole bunch of Turks during Ramadan this year, and it was pretty funny. So sitting at a table with the real Turks, and I'm like, not to be confused with and I don't have a problem with the Young Turks, but I definitely like the real Turks.
Actually, I remember there was a Turkish family I spent New Year's Eve with in 2002. You had to take your shoes off in the house and everything, and watched a lot of television from Turkey, a lot of television from Syria and Iran. It was actually pretty interesting. So
yeah, I've learned a lot this month, like a lot. I've learned more about like Muslim culture, more than probably my whole life combined, just from the amount of iftar dinners I've been to and the amount of people in the community that I've met, and so many different ethnicities. So it's been so interesting. And I feel very like privileged to have that.
They were Christian. They were Christian themselves, kind of lukewarm. They were socialists, fellow socialists, but were just hanging out with them one evening in Durham and spending New Year's Eve with them. It was really, really, really cool. About 22 years ago, I enjoyed that evening. Enjoyed the food that they had to offer and everything. Just like, it's pretty awesome evening. So
yeah,
I almost forgot about that evening until you brought it up. So because they don't live around here, I think they live in California now. So anyway, but it suffice to say, let's talk about the Democratic primary you're in versus the Democratic primary that is existing in the year 2024, the non-democratic primary, where basically, we could say that Marianne Williamson, Shank Hugert, and Dean Phillips have been given
right.
rough ride.
Yeah. They decided not to have a primary, but yet they're claiming that Trump is the cause of lack of democracy. Think it through. Like, how absurd is that?
Absolutely.
And people are pissed, and it completely screwed down ballot races all across the board. And I know for sure it did in Florida. So I can only imagine other places as well. But yeah, when people don't come out to vote, when there's no primary, you hurt any chance of having Democrats down ballot. Like, you screw your own so badly. And that just goes to show you they have no concept of strategy.
Yeah, I went to vote in the primaries back at it was on my birthday, no less, on March 5th. And so I went to go and vote, and so it was a spoiled ballot because all it was some local races that I knew nothing about. And it was just kind of like I was going to go and vote on the green ballot line, but there was nothing to vote for. And the Greens are on the ballot in North Carolina, and I mean there was nothing but just a bunch of local candidates running that I knew nothing about. So I normally do vote in primaries, but I was just like, I can't sit there and just fill in the blanks of people I know nothing about.
Yeah.
So, but
yeah, somebody's asking if I'm a center-right candidate, and that's why I'm running in a party that's right of center. No and no. I'm not center-right at all. And the reason I'm running in a center-right party is that's the only option here.
Yeah.
So that's the menu if you want to win. So I'm strategizing.
This is not intended to be a trick question, but where do you stand on what's called, Breonna Joy Gray talked about this, a dirty break?
I'm not sure what that is. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that. What's a dirty? I don't know what that is.
A dirty break is when you enter a primary and you enter the primary and you don't get the nomination, but you don't endorse the candidate and you run as an independent outside.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would never endorse Debbie Wasserman Schultz ever. Like, I would never do that. And if I would be willing to do that, I wouldn't run against her. And there is no chance in this district of anybody winning in a general election other than a Democrat. I want people to really understand this. It's like people keep asking, and I get it. It's confusing, but I'm going to explain it. Only the Democrat can win in this blue district. That's how it works. That's why Debbie's been sitting there for 20 years. Less than 14% voter turnout in a primary. Half of them vote in the Democratic primary. She gets maybe 40,000 votes and she sits there for 20 years. If you run in the general, you lose to the Democrat. End of story. I want to make this clear. The only way to unseat this particular incumbent in this particular race is in a Democratic primary. I can't speak to other people. I can't speak to how other people's thoughts are on policy, but I am not anywhere near center right. I'm left. I'm left. But it is what it is. And I understand people are critical of that. But basically, at the end of the day, are you critical enough that you would rather her be there than me? Seriously, like, that's what it really comes down to. Like, are you so critical of the strategy and the manner in which I'm going about it that you want to work against me, make my life harder, and be difficult versus help someone who's trying to, like, slay a dragon? So, I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Okay, that's fair. That's actually fair. And next question is your thoughts on Robert F. Kennedy?
I'm glad he's doing what he's doing. I like anything that goes to crush the duopoly. Like, that pleases me. And the truth is that they have no standing, as far as I'm concerned, the Democrats, to criticize it when they wouldn't allow him to have a primary. So I'm happy with what he's doing. And I support him especially I'd like to see him reach the threshold, get the 5%, get the fund, all of that. So I'm very supportive of that. However, He is not my candidate. I don't support him. To me, he is just, him being wrong on Israel is a deal breaker for me. It's that simple. I also do not like that he affiliates with Rabbi Shmuley, who I think is arguably one of the most despicable, disgusting, abhorrent people I've seen on TV as of late. So those are my thoughts about, and I do think he's right about certain things regarding like BlackRock, and I think he's right about things regarding the deep state and regarding the party. But my red line is Palestine.
Yeah, there's a host of issues. He's a wash for me. There are things I love about Robert F. Kennedy, and there are things I absolutely loathe about him. And so he's sort of 50-50 with me. And I actually think he's going to take votes away from Trump and Biden alike. I think
do too.
I think that he's there. He will actually, and I say this in a good way, he's going to be a monkey wrench in this election.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I've said that he's pulling votes from both sides. And that's why, to me, this is so unpredictable. And even when you're looking at polls, because especially this far out, you just don't know. This can go in a lot of different directions, not the least of which I wouldn't be shocked if the Democrats pulled Biden at the convention and tried to slip in someone else. So I just think there's a lot of unknowns still.
Same here. And just I mean, it's kind of unsettling that what we're going to end up with on election day is, which I'm not going to vote for either one of them, is part two of Biden and Trump again.
Unless the Democrats do end up slipping someone else in there, but I would also suggest that I won't vote for them either. So you're essentially looking at a situation where it can go either way, depending on the third party candidates this time, which that pleases me, because these parties, they should not be presuming anything. I've been very clear that I support Dr. Cornel West. I support his campaign because that's the message I like being promoted. That's what I like him talking about, and I want to support that message. But at the end of the day, if he's not on my ballot, I will be voting green, because I know that that'll be on my ballot in Florida. So that's my sort of backup. That's my plan.
You see, I'm in a dilemma about, I don't think he's going to be on a ballot in North Carolina. And my dilemma is, who am I going to vote for? If he's on the ballot and Jill Stein is on the ballot and Claudia De La Cruz is on the ballot and William Stodden, who I know from the Socialist Party, is on the ballot, that'll be a good problem for me to have. But I think that what's going to end up happening in North Carolina is just going to be the Green Party, presumably Jill Stein. Exactly. So I think there's like a 90% chance, and it's a good vote, but I think that it's a 90% chance that my vote will be going to Jill Stein in November, which I voted for her before. I'll vote for her again.
Same.
Yeah.
You saw we had her on. It was so exciting for me. It was the first time I ever interviewed someone that I had voted for president. Like that was cool to me. And you know what? At the end of the day, I am going to go with whichever non-genocidal candidate is available on my ballot. And then if there's more than one, I probably will go with whoever I think is polling higher at that point to get closer to the 5%, possibly. Like I might be strategic if the other, I don't know. But right now my plan is I support Dr. West's campaign, and I got criticized for platforming Jill Stein. I have a podcast, somebody running for president that will be on ballots in every state in this country offered to come on my show and talk to me, and I'm somehow criticized for platforming her because she's a Green Party candidate. That is off the wall. You people have lost your minds.
It's your podcast. You can do what you want with your podcast.
Completely. And I'm sorry. We have a small but mighty podcast. I'm not going to turn down interviewing a presidential candidate. Sorry, that's absurd. Especially one who will be on the ballot. And so that is, and I've had Dr. West on and I love him. Look, the truth is, I would be okay with any of those three people that I know, because I also like Claudia De La Cruz, but I don't know if she'll be on the ballot, right? So I'm not sure, but I think most likely if traditionally in the past, I would be voting green. That would be my assessment.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that that um, after election day, the important work is what we do between elections, and that's another thing that people need to realize because and a lot of the work, it's not so sexy, but a lot of the work is locally, what people do locally, and it's a little bit discouraging because I live in a small town just outside of Raleigh. I'm like, what can I do here in this small little town in Johnson County to turn it into a micro social democracy? So it's kind of like, what the hell can I do? So you look at the bigger picture instead of what you can do locally, and so it can be kind of discouraging at times. So
Yeah,
um,
it is. It is. I mean, we're essentially like when you're running for Congress, the best way, I mean, in my experience, it's essentially two campaigns, right? Like we have our national campaign, my podcast, the stuff that, we need donations, that we need lots of small dollar donations to be able to fight the monolith. But at the end of the day, the campaign that matters the most is the one we do locally in our community in terms of getting out voters and in terms of connecting with our people. And that is what is key. The fundraising facilitates it so that we can spend more time on the ground doing things like service and actually intermingling with our community and getting out the vote and all that. But it's two totally different concepts. How you appeal to local people to come out and vote versus how you appeal nationally to bring in money are very different things.
Yeah, and money dictates it all, and so even if you try to do something locally, I mean, big money's going to make sure it gets, your projects are going to get knocked over. And you try to do it statewide, same thing. And you do
Yeah.
it nationally, same thing. And it's and and to try to get big money out of politics, that's something that needs to take place. But
Yep.
it, that's another battle in itself too.
Well, and definitely support Jose Vega. Absolutely support Jose Vega. I see that somewhere in the chat. I definitely
Yes.
support him. And we actually have had him. He's a friend of our show. We've had him on the show. We've had him on since he's been a candidate. He's somebody that I've met in person a few times. I absolutely support Jose Vega. Richie Torres is abysmal, and I cannot stand that man. So look, I understand people are skeptical. I get it. It's hard to not be skeptical. And I can only speak for myself and what I think of that I can do to contribute to getting the corporate money out. And that's by being a non-corporate candidate and a non-corporate person, and also being someone who is not consumed with this as a career and has no intention of making it one. And you can't ever trust that on face value. I get it. You can't. I mean, it's hard, especially when you see people that you thought would be that, but then they're not that, and it's frustrating. So, it's a hard position to be in. But I can only say, like, what I'm doing is not working for corporations and special interests.
So, would there be any primary debate between you and Debbie Wasserman Schultz?
Oh, hell no. First of all, she will not be seen in public with me. She won't be on a stage with me. She won't even acknowledge me. I don't think she'll even mention my name throughout the entire thing. She's going to pretend she's not being primaried. And for the most part, locally, she gets away with it because none of the clubs get involved in primaries. They're all just like, we support whoever the Democrat is. We don't get involved in primaries. So no, she won't debate me. And the thing is, I don't want to debate her. I have nothing to debate with her. There is nothing I want to debate with her. I find her despicable. I find she's been for sale for years. She clearly works for AIPAC. She gets her talking points directly from them. Like, what are we going to debate? I'm not going to debate universal health care with her. I'm not going to debate a living wage with her. I'm not going to debate that I don't support fracking with her because she invests in fracking. So I feel like I'm so far past those issues. It would be like debating a flat earther at this point with her.
Well, yeah, and she is terrible on all these issues and many more. I mean, she's almost a Republican except on a few safe social issues.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you?
Hey, I gotta bounce. I gotta make a whole bunch of thank you calls.
Okay. No, I was just about to say, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah. So, guys, check out the website. We're gen2024.org. Follow me on social media at Jen Perelman. Actually, no, it's Gen 4 Congress 2024 at Gen 4 Congress 2024. And also, we are having our first Zoom fundraiser Thursday night at 8:00. You can sign up on our website. Nina Turner is going to be our guest, and we're going to be having really interesting conversation, and people who come are able to ask questions and participate. And I think it'll be a really good discussion. So we'd love people to sign up for that and just spread the word. Follow us on social media. And if you have it in you to sign up, help us as volunteer. If there's anything that you can do to help. I mean, it's we're really trying to take over a monolith.
Is that Gen for Congress, the number 4, or
no? Gen FOR Congress.
Okay, gotcha. Hold on
2024.
All right. I just want to make sure I got it right.
Yeah, that's
okay.
It. Yes. Well,
okay,
that's okay. And well, no, that's our website. That's our Gen for Congress 2024 is our social media handle. Our website is just gen2024.org.
Gen.
Right. So Gen for Congress 2024 is our Instagram, is our TikTok, and is our Twitter. And then gen2024.org is our website.
Okay, let me get that right. We're going to get that right there. There we go.
Perfect. That's us.
Okay. Y'all follow that and follow her. I'm gonna make sure that's put on the description box after the show.
Thank you.
I do have your other information down. So be sure.
What am I going to do with the war chest I accumulate when I lose? Well, as much as I appreciate your optimism, enthusiasm, and positive vibes in my mind, thank you for that. We don't have a war chest. We basically are hand to mouth. We're going to do the best we can to do the best race we can, serve the community. And that's all I'm going to do is use this platform as best I can. But I appreciate your attitude. Thank you so much, Willie. I appreciate you.
Yes.
No, that's not realism. That's not realism. That's negative crap. Realism is that somebody who got 30% 4 years ago and has been working the district and campaigning. It's not unrealistic at all. Especially somebody who's done the work I've been doing on the ground here. But sure, it's still hard, but it's not unrealistic. It's just difficult.
Yeah, take it from me. I remember running, telling my audience, I remember running across your campaign 4 years ago. And I was really impressed when I stumbled across your campaign, and been following you since then. And I wish you the very, very best of luck.
Thank you, Willie. I appreciate you too. And when we win, I will be happy to come on here as a congressperson, by the way.
Oh, and the invitation will be sent for damn sure. Absolutely. And thank you for showing up here on the Willy Bragg Show. And once again, thank you very much. And if y'all like what you heard, please press like and comment any way you disagree with what I have to say. We'll have a conversation. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As the First Amendment absolutist, as the First Amendment absolutist, I encourage each and every one of you to create your own platform, utilize it, because we're the muckrakers of our time. Feel free to share the content on this channel. Subscribe to my show here, the Willy Bragg Show, on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter. You got it. Reject all corporate media. Free Palestine, free Julian Assange, free healthcare for all, and free speech. And I will see you all next time. Take care.